I just won the speech evaluation contest at my local Toastmasters club, and in this video, I'm going to teach you exactly how I did it. I'm going to give you information about what the judges are looking for. I'm going to teach you how to write your notes in an effective template manner, and then how you can actually ditch those notes for the speech evaluation contest so that you're delivering a great evaluation without looking down at notes at all. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Cool, Wade, you won a club contest. Great. But does that really give you the authority to create a YouTube video about how to win the speech evaluation contest, especially at higher levels? Well, here's the reality. In my Toastmasters career, I have competed 5 times in speech evaluation contests, and I have won every single time I have competed. Back in 2017, I competed at the club level, then the area level, then the district level, then the division level, and I won all of those contests. First place every time. And then this year, 6 years later, I'm taking it on again, and I just won the club contest. And in all of those situations, I have deployed the same strategy. So I want you to watch this video very carefully, especially if you're thinking of taking on a contest, because throughout, I'm going to give little tidbits of information which are essential and which, if you follow, I promise you will increase your chances at winning your next speech evaluation contest. So let's start with, what is a speech evaluation contest? How does it work? Because it's a very unique contest within the Toastmasters system. A test speaker will come up to the front of the room and speak for 5 to 7 minutes. And during that time, contestants in the speech evaluation contest can furiously write notes on a single piece of paper, which is what I have here. This is from today's contest. And you can write as many notes as you can while the speaker is delivering his or her presentation. And then after that presentation has concluded, the sergeant at arms will take out the contestants when they're in person, or there will be a breakout room via Zoom, and contestants will have an additional 5 minutes to write any notes that they need. And then after that 5-minute point, the sergeant at arms will take away your notes. So you don't have notes that you can look at, and there will be a predetermined order of who gives their evaluations from there. When it's your turn to come up and present for your speech evaluation contest, you will have between 2 and 3 minutes to deliver your presentation. And it is incredibly important that you are aware of the time and that you can see the timing lights, because any evaluation that is less than 1 minute 30 seconds will be disqualified. And any evaluation that is more than 3 minutes 30 seconds will also be disqualified. And it would be such a shame to deliver a great evaluation only to find out you didn't even have a chance at winning because you went over or under time. So you might be wondering, well, what are the judges looking for when they're giving scores to the various speech evaluators? And I'm going to show you the Toastmasters official judges guide and the categories that they're looking at. As you can see, there are 4 categories and each has a different weighting. The first is analytical quality. Is it clear? Is it focused? The second is recommendations. Were they positive, specific, and helpful? The third is technique. Was it sympathetic, sensitive, motivational? And finally, summation. Was it concise? Was it encouraging? My first massive tip that is incredibly important if you are going to win a speech evaluation contest is don't miss that 4th category. It is the most common mistake I have seen in these speech evaluation contests, is that people completely forget to give a conclusion. And to be quite frank, it is the easiest part of delivering a speech evaluation. You simply have to remember to do it. Later in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how you can incorporate a conclusion. Winning a speech evaluation contest starts as soon as you receive your blank piece of paper. These are the notes I wrote on today, but this paper was blank when I received it. As soon as you receive that piece of paper, that is when the contest starts for you. Most people don't approach it that way. They have their piece of paper and they listen to the speaker and they don't think to write notes. In my experience, you have to be constantly writing notes as you are listening to the speaker because it is hard. You are in a contest. You're not going to remember every single thing that the speaker talks about. So it's important that you be writing down notes continuously throughout the speech, which are going to help you formulate your official evaluation later on. On the screen, you're going to see a template of how I approach taking my notes, which has led me to have success in this contest. And it's really broken down into 4 categories. You'll see the word intro up at the top, then a plus sign, below that a minus sign, and at the bottom, conclusion. You'll also notice that I've included the word speaker name up at the top of the sheet. And as soon as you learn the name of the test speaker, write his or her name down so that you don't forget it. Write it in big letters. I want you to continuously think about that name because as you're giving your evaluation, you're going to say the speaker's name and you don't want to forget what that person's name is. So let's start with the intro, one of the most important parts of a great evaluation. And I want you to think about these evaluations for the contests as almost a speech within themselves. Many contestants will start off with the Toastmasters formalities. Thank you, Madam Contest Chair, fellow Toastmasters, and especially Bob, or whatever the test speaker's name was. And that's good. You want to include the formalities, but if you can, you want to have an introduction first, which references something that was said or a general theme about the speech. This is going to act as your hook to get the audience's attention. Then you can transition into the formalities. Thank you, Madam Contest Chair, fellow Toastmasters, and then from there, you can jump into the next section, which is that plus sign, which is the things that the speaker did very well. Considering that the intro is one of the most important parts of a speech evaluation contest, I want you to pay incredibly close attention, especially when the test speaker is starting, to find a direct quote or something they say that is powerful, funny, memorable, and I want you to write that in your intro section, and that is how you can start your evaluation, by literally repeating some of the words that the speaker said. As an example, in the speech evaluation contest that I won today, the test speaker gave a very emotional and vulnerable speech, and she started that speech by saying, "For 31 years, I was very sad." She had a longer intro, but then later in the speech, she talked about a book that had helped her gain a new perspective in life. Let's call this test speaker Susie. This was how I started my introduction of the evaluation I did today. For 31 years, I was very sad. But then I found this book, The 4 Agreements, and since then, I've had a different perspective on life. Thank you, Madam Contest Chair, fellow Toastmasters, and especially Susie. And from there, I went into the speech. So it was taking a specific thing, a specific line that was referenced, that was powerful, and that's how I started my evaluation. If you're able to do this, I guarantee you're going to separate yourself from most of the other competitors, especially at the club level. And as you get further in the contest, more and more people will be deploying this type of creativity. So you'll need to have an intro like this in order to compete with the others. So in the middle of the piece of paper, you have a plus sign and a minus sign. The plus represents the things the speaker did very well, and I want you to try to find 3 things that the speaker did very well. The minus represents areas they could have improved, or gifts, as we call it in Toastmasters, and I want you to find 2 things that they could improve upon. Why 3 and why 2, this magic number of 5? In my experience, 5 things to touch on is about the most things that you can talk about within the allotted time comfortably within that 3 minutes, and you need to be moving at a quick pace, it also allows you to provide specific examples for those things. The other reason we're giving 3 positives and 2 gifts is that, as I mentioned on the judges sheet, so many of the categories are you being sympathetic? Are you being helpful? Are you being encouraging? And the more positive things we can talk about what the speaker did, the more it fits into that judge's criteria. You may have noticed something else on my notes template for the speech evaluation contest, and that is some words and categories on the right-hand side. This is something I always do. I write down a number of things like body language, vocal variety, speech structure, ahs and ums or strategic pauses, humor, and a few other words. We know that these are the essentials to what makes a good speech. And sometimes when we're evaluating somebody in the moment, we may forget to keep an eye out for certain things, but if we have those words to the side, we can instantly connect what they're doing well and what they need to improve upon. So in the past, I've actually taken a word like body language and just drawn an arrow into the plus category or put a little plus beside it as a quick reminder, this speaker is using really great body language. Or if they are saying and ah a lot, these are filler words that would be better replaced by pauses. I could put a little negative sign beside it, and that will jog my memory to know that maybe strategic pauses is one of the ways the speaker could improve their next speech. So while part of your task is identifying these 3 things the speaker did well and 2 things that they could improve upon, your biggest challenge is to find specific examples and write those down word for word so that you remember to talk about them when you're delivering your presentation. Again, as an example, in the club contest that I competed in today, the test speaker was talking about her mother, and it was a powerful line. And when she did, she brought her hands close to her chest. In my evaluation, as I was talking about the fact that Susie had used great body language, I brought my hands to my heart and I repeated that line that she had spoken about her mother to remind everyone in the room of that body language. And in another part of the speech, she had talked about being like rubber and not glue and allowing things to deflect off of you. And she made this motion of coming in and pushing out. And so as I gave that example, I did the same hand motion, coming in, pushing out, and it allowed for everyone to be able to remember that exact moment in the speech. The more specific examples you're able to include in your evaluation, the more you will stand out from the other contestants, and this isn't easy. It's almost as challenging as finding that intro information, but you're going to be constantly on the lookout, and that's why I say it's so important as the speaker is speaking. You want to be looking up and observing him or her, but you constantly want to be writing notes down so that you can give these relevant examples. Just like the positives, the 3 positive things where you give examples, you're going to deploy the same thing for the gifts. And when you're presenting, you're going to talk about all the positive things, and then you're going to transition into, so how could Susie make this speech even better in the future? I think there's a couple of opportunities, and then you talk about the 2 gifts in a positive, constructive way. I mentioned before the conclusion is one of the most important parts that is most commonly missed, yet is really the easiest thing, because you're just repeating all of the things you said, but you need to ensure your evaluation ends with this. How I like to structure conclusions is by saying, to conclude, if Susie continues to use a great body language while keeping a solid speech structure and eliminating those filler words like she did so well with strategic pauses, and she also includes the element of eye contact and a stronger conclusion, her future speeches are going to be incredible. All you have to do for the conclusion is repeat these things in that formula, and the judges will give you full marks or high marks for doing that. But so many people forget to do this, and that is 15 points on the scoreboard that they are leaving behind, because if they don't do it, that is a big 0 that goes beside that category. So you're furiously writing notes while the speaker is speaking, and then he or she finishes. The sergeant at arms takes you outside, and you have 5 minutes with your notes, or if you're on Zoom, you're put in a breakout room. You need to focus. I have seen other contestants chat to each other. In my mind, this is a massive mistake. You need to find a quiet spot with your notes and finish filling in all the categories. For me, often it's tough to read my writing. It's like chicken scratch. So I'm trying to clearly write out, what is that intro? What is that specific intro that I'm going to say? What are a couple of examples for each of the categories? I don't worry too much about conclusion, because if I've memorized everything else, the conclusion's going to come pretty naturally, but I do write out just that reminder to include the conclusion at the end. Once that 5 minutes is done, you are going to either be called out right away if you're contestant number 1, or you're going to have some time, but that time is going to be without your notes. And I want to dispel a rumor, because many people think that if you go first or you go third or you go last, that there's a massive advantage or disadvantage. And I will say each position has its own pros and cons. So if you're the first contestant to go, sure, you don't have as much time to think about what you're going to say. However, your notes are the most fresh in your head. You've just finished writing them, and then you're jumping right in front of the crowd. Whereas the people who have to wait longer, they're stuck with their thoughts and they may not remember exactly what they've written down. However, if you do go later, whether it's last or third or fifth in the contest, I also see that as being an opportunity, because you have time without your notes to find a quiet spot and visualize yourself and talk quietly to yourself as you mouth the words of what you're going to say in that evaluation, and you can mentally practice and try to remember what you had written down. And the longer you have to do this, the more comfortable you may be without ever looking at your notes. The further you go with these speech evaluation contests, the more important it is to deliver an evaluation without referencing your notes. Therefore, this memorization piece is incredibly important. And while I understand things happen, we freeze when we're in a contest, and you may want some comfort of the notes, one suggestion is to adjust the podium to the side so that your notes are there, but you have the goal of not referencing them, of making eye contact with the audience. And then if you forget what you're going to say, you can quickly look to the side, reference your notes, and then turn back to everyone. But those people who give evaluations by holding or looking at their notes the whole time, you may have success at the club level, but I would guess at the area and the higher levels, you're going to run into competitors who are not using notes and therefore come across as better evaluators. So when it's your turn to deliver your speech evaluation, the sergeant at arms will bring you into the room. You will shake the hand of the contest chair. He or she will introduce you. They may ask you if you can see the timing lights. And then that's your chance. You can set your notes down, maybe move the podium to the side, and then you begin your evaluation. And in order to succeed with this evaluation, you're going to do all of the things we've already talked about in this video. You're going to start with that intro or that hook to draw in the audience, a line or two, a specific example or a specific theme from the speech that draws in the audience's attention. Then you have your formalities. Thank you, Mr. Contest Chair, fellow Toastmasters, welcomed guests, and especially, and you say the speaker's name. You can, if you feel comfortable, include other dignitaries. Some people do this. One way to address it, if you know there's many dignitaries in the room, you can say, thank you, Madam Contest Chair, honored dignitaries, fellow Toastmasters, welcome guests, and especially, and always say the speaker's name especially. An important piece about winning a speech evaluation contest is to stay in third person. A common mistake is to transition from saying the speaker's name, Susie, and then saying you and looking at Susie and saying, you did this really well. You don't want to do that. You always want to reference Susie talking in third person so that everyone in the room gets the full benefit of the evaluation and it doesn't feel like it's just being directed to Susie. So you've done the intro and then the formalities, and then you transition into that first positive. And bonus points if you can tie the intro into what the first positive is, because it will make it flow that much more smoothly. For positives, you may address things like speech structure. You may talk about humor if it was injected in strategic ways. You may talk about strategic pauses, elimination of ums and ahs. You may talk about vocal variety. You may talk about body language. You may talk about eye contact. There are many, many things you can bring up. And as I mentioned earlier on your notes, it helps to have some of these categories on the side so that you remember them while you're writing notes for your evaluation. So one at a time, you give these positives with specific examples if you can. Then you say the words, how does Susie make this speech even better in the future? And you transition into those two gifts, those two areas of improvement, and still try to deliver them in a positive way. After you've done that, you wrap up. In conclusion, if Susie continues to do this, this, and this, and also begins to implement this and this, the two gifts, she is going to do incredible in the future. Boom, you've added the conclusion, 15 points. You have a creative hook off the start. You've given great positive advice throughout. That is a winning speech evaluation, my friends. I hope this deep dive into the speech evaluation contest with Toastmasters and how you can win at even the highest levels was helpful for you. Please let me know. My YouTube channel is all about not only Toastmasters, but how to become a more impactful communicator in general. And also, I have worked with others who have wanted to take on the speech contest. I've worked in a consulting form. I've also helped others in their Toastmasters journey through things like icebreaker speeches. So if you want to work with me and see what that premium service looks like, please let me know. My email is down in the notes. Otherwise, best of luck on your speech evaluation contest. You're going to do great.